Well, for more on the future of tobacco and marijuana industries, let's cross over to Silicon Valley in California and speak with Robert Proctor. He's a leading tobacco expert and a professor at Stanford University. He's also the author of Golden Holocaust, Origins of the Cigarette Catastrophe and the Case for Abolition. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rachelle.
So as we heard, there are a number of changes that are coming in. So what do all these changes actually mean for the traditional tobacco industry?
Well, the traditional tobacco industry is really just starting to go on the decline. We're peaking this year at about 6 trillion cigarettes, and we can really expect that to go down henceforward, mainly as a result of China. China smokes nearly half the world's cigarettes, about 2.5 trillion, a little bit over 2.5 trillion. And we're probably going to see a decline for the first time in Chinese smoking this year. That's a big deal. On the other hand, there are these other opportunities coming up that the cigarette industry is probably going to be very interested in. Electronic cigarettes are growing, recreational marijuana is growing, so those are likely to be big prospects in the future.
So then with this decline, and as you're also mentioning things like e-cigarettes, other things developing, how do you think big tobacco will or should respond to all these changes?
Well, they've been looking at the prospect of a recreational legalization since the 1970s. They were interested in the brand names, in the commercial possibilities, and they are likely going to see marijuana as a kind of a gateway drug to cigarettes. Marijuana presents a kind of training and inhalation, especially for teenagers. And even though marijuana is not addictive the way tobacco is, it opens up the kind of training for deep inhalation, use of this recreational drug. And this is liable actually to help the cigarette industry with their business.
So as you mentioned, you're saying that these, for marijuana, it could be this gateway for people to end up in tobacco. So then how does big tobacco actually view the marijuana industry? Is it more a case of competition, or as you said, this opportunity to really expand its reach into new areas?
Well, it has historically been competition, but with this new legalization, that presents a positive atmosphere, I think, for big tobacco. Again, it's a kind of a liberalization environment, which is something they like. The cigarette industry does not like prohibition at all. That's always been the big threat, is communities starting to ban or restrict the sale of cigarettes. So this is really going to be an opportunity for them, especially if we start to see the marketing of marijuana in a large scale. The cigarette industry already has very good outlets, retail outlets, convenience stores for selling cigarettes, and those might be co-opted as a means to sell marijuana.
Now, Robert, in terms of innovation, how do you see items like e-cigarettes or perhaps some of these blends expanding to really take advantage of this marijuana boom we're seeing?
Well, I think probably the biggest danger I would see is when the two are joined. If tobacco and marijuana start being joined together, the way we already see with blunts or spliffs, those are both marijuana tobacco mixtures, which are particularly dangerous because they have the nicotine, which is addictive, and the recreational aspect of the marijuana, the THC. So I think the biggest danger is when this firewall that we've had up to the past, illegal marijuana, legal tobacco, when that becomes blended and blurred, we're liable to see a new type of mixed epidemic.
So with that being said then, let's also look at some of the benefits and, as you mentioned, some of these potential pitfalls. What do all these changes mean when it comes to what's happening with local economies?
Well, local economies for a long time have depended on cigarette taxes. In fact, 10 or 20 years ago, more than 10% of the entire Chinese government was funded just by tobacco taxes. If you go back over 100 years, a third of the entire United States government was funded just by tariffs on tobacco. So it's what I call the second addiction. Governments really depend to a large extent on cigarettes for tax revenue. And so there's a kind of ambivalence. And the way that usually works out is health ministries don't like tobacco,
Right.
finance ministries love tobacco, and that creates a conflict of interest.
So then with that being said, people are wondering whether the legal marijuana industry will go the same way as big tobacco, for better or worse. What's your take on the outlook for further changes in this space?
Well, that's a really big question. I think it's a good thing that we're seeing the end of criminalization of marijuana. The danger, I guess, would become as if this becomes an enormous industry, if it's fused with other addictive industries. Now we have a kind of retail environment where you're getting medicinal shops being set up, therapeutic medical marijuana springing up, and that's how much of it's being sold. But if it becomes purely recreational, and especially, again, if it's blended with cigarettes and made more addictive, that would be the big danger.
Well, certainly lots to keep an eye on there. Thank you so much for your insights, tobacco expert, author, and Stanford University professor, Robert Proctor.